Some of the most interesting songs to listen to are the ones where you can keep looping them on repeat and hearing new things every time you listen. This is usually achieved by stacking various sounds and textures, and to do this effectively you need to make sure that everything's got its own space in the mix. So in this video I'm going to be making a sort of ambient lo-fi beat with lots of depth and texture to it, and I'm going to make sure it's a really interesting track in the stereo field by using a couple of different methods. So I'll break down what I'm talking about in this video, and to do this I'm going to be using my new Stratocaster guitar. So I'll be talking a little bit more about the guitar and my guitar setup later in the video for anyone who's interested in that, but you can use this stacking method with anything really: pianos, synths, pads, etc., to get the sort of same effect. And quickly before I start, there is a new competition this week, and there's also the results for the RC20 competition. So I'm just going to use this comment picker to pick the winners for that one. So the winner is Daniel Diaz Canseco. So yeah, congratulations, you've won the RC20. And for this week's competition, the prize is going to be a Valhalla VST. So any of the reverbs, delay style VST effects you could win. All you got to do to enter is like the video, drop a comment and be a subscriber. And as soon as we hit 300 likes again, I'll be giving that one away. So be sure to enter for that one. But anyway, I'm just going to kick things off by recording my initial guitar sample. So this is going to be the core of the track, and basically all I'm doing is I'm recording one string at a time. You can do this with piano, just recording the bass notes as well as sort of middle and high notes, or with a synth, and you can have more than three. But yeah, it's just a nice way of stacking different chord progressions and having control of the individual notes. So now what I can do is I can pan these two a little bit, give it a bit of space. So there's a bit of a back and forward on those two. And I can throw an auto pan onto the sort of top end. I'm just going to have that, give a little bit of movement to it. So that's going to move left to right as the track goes on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a pitch shifter onto the master of these now. So shout out to Bcom for showing me this plugin. It sounds really good. So that's a little bit darker. And if you're wondering, the reverb on this is spaced out by Baby Audio. Sounds really dreamy and ethereal. So that is the loop that I'm going to use as the sort of basis of the track. I also want to tidy it up a bit, so I'm going to throw a soothe on there just to get rid of some of the resonance in the low end, and then I'm going to bounce it and I'll start working on a track from there. So I've dragged the loop into a fresh session. Put the volume a little bit there. And I've laid with it the usual atmosphere. This one I've gone a little bit heavy on the background effect. So this is just a clean vinyl crackle, cut the low end a little bit, and then I've thrown on this pitched down coffee shop sample thing. So what this is doing is, as the track goes on, the aim of the game is to add as much texture as possible. And there are little noises that you'll hear as certain things get louder, it'll fade into the background, and when it gets quieter, the noise of the coffee shop will come in again. And then I've also set up two sends, which again will help as I progress the track on to add more depth and variation. So the first one is to Portal, and that is to the Sleep Cycle preset. So I've cut the low end, it's going to Sleep Cycle, and as you can hear, it's got a sort of panning delay effect. And they've also got a space setting, which is sending to spaced out. And this is supposed to be the sort of background ambient reverb. So I've got a bit of pre-delay in there. I've got a Stardust on there, which sort of triggers like an ethereal ambient reverb. That sort of pitch shift, so it takes the reverb and it shifts it up. And we're on the lush setting, medium space. So both of these, to some extent, will have different tracks ascending to them, and that's going to help generate some more textures, ambiances, etc. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to texture in some vocals, some vocal stacks. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did with guitar, record different vocal lines, do some panning on them, and hopefully give it a lot more life. So I'll start by adding them in, and I'll break down what I'm doing. So I've just finished adding various textures to the track. So I've got vocal stuff as well as string sounds that are all there designed to sort of hide in the track. And as certain parts dip out, you'll just hear sprinkles of sound from different sources. And that just adds to that variance. So every time you listen to it, there can be more depth as you go through. So the first thing I did was do a sort of vocal pad stack. So I did that using the Think signature, which I talked about a little while ago in a few videos back, which is some vocal pads, as well as the Oliver Patrice, which I've used loads, which is great for adding a little bit of vocal texture. So they're all going to different sends at different amounts just to give it more sort of presence, or push it back in the mix by sending it to the spacious reverb, and then a little bit to portal as well to give it a little bit more of that granular delay. So start off with Think. We've got these two panned hard left and right, as well as the main sort of central vocal. And then onto Oliver Patrice. Again, we've got some left and right panning. And this central one. And they've all got different attacks and releases. So even though some of them are playing the same thing MIDI-wise, it'll sort of kick in slightly later, which adds to this sort of pulsing flow to the track. So in context, I'd probably drop this down a little bit in the mix towards the end, but it sounds pretty good. Next up, I just added a string sort of section. So I've got various string sample libraries I just rarely use, so I added a few of them together and just played the same thing. So I've got the Spitfire stuff, so the Alpha Arnold's Evolutions, layered with Albion Neo, layered with Albion Solstice, and they're all just sort of, I was just playing the same thing. So I had all three MIDI activated, so when I play, it plays on all of them. And if I trigger this on, again, it's just a little bit of depth to the track. But what I've done with this is, firstly, it's sends only, so it's going to portal and it's going to space reverb, and the dry signal is not getting played at all, just the sends. And to the sends, we've cut the low end, put a sketch cassette on there with a little bit of wobble, put an autopan on there, so effectively as the track goes on, there'll be bits where it completely dips out and you can't hear it, and there'll be bits where it dips back up again and you can hear it. Bit of fresh air just to spice up the top end, and again a bit of filler delay just to delay the top end. So in the context of everything else, and finally I've got this Blisco viola effects. So the first one is the pointillist sustains. So that's this effect. And a good thing I like about these is they've got a sort of variance option which triggers samples differently as the MIDIs flow through. And we've also got more of a sort of standard viola. This is just very reverb heavy. Again, that's just a soft texture in the background. So that's what we're left with so far. Quite a full organic track. And then next thing I wanted to do was add some vocals. So I've got stuff like the Alex Lens, which I've used quite a lot. But I recently picked up Arcade, and it's got some great sounds in there. If you've not heard of Arcade, it's from Output, and it's just a massive library of samples and playable instruments. It's a subscription model. I think it's about $10 a month. And yeah, I mean, there's so much to dig into. I was going to make a video dedicated to this because there's so many great sounds in there, and it's got some great stuff as well that you can do. So if I press one of the black keys, I'll trigger one of these blue samples, which is like an arpeggiator. I'm going to have a mess with this now, see if I can get some Arcade and some Alex Lens in there for a little bit of ambience in the vocal section, and then I'm going to start and lay in the drums. So using Arcade and Alex Lens, I've managed to texture in some nice ambient vocals that just sprinkle in a little bit of interesting sound throughout the track. So the first one was the Arcade, which I've frozen, but it was from the Distant Voices Captivation, and I was using that arpeggio mode to get this little thing here. And layered that with an Aleph Lens. So both of them I've cut the lows because I just want the sort of higher frequencies. And on Olive Lens, I've used a decapitator to give it some heavy distortion and cut the highs as well. So I've got a sort of gritty, muffled texture. And finally, I've got this little Dreamy pad, which plays different samples again over the 50 seconds. And that's super ambient. So we've got the low cut and we've got Portal on there with the Dreamy Music Box preset. In context for this track. So this one is becoming super sort of ambient, but hopefully there's just enough in there to keep it interesting. And now I start to add guitar and the drums and the Foley, which I talked about in the Foley video. So yeah, it should start to piece together as a solid track. And then the lead lines that I do with the guitar and the percussion with the Foley is hopefully going to cut through the ambience and give it the structure it needs. And I'm going to use things like track spacer and compressors to duck some of the sounds as other sounds come in. So yeah, onto drums and guitar. So yeah, that is pretty much the beat. I wasn't 100% sure where I was going with this when I started the video, but I'm really happy with the end result, so I'll definitely be making this into a fully fledged beat. If you need some tips on how to do that, I made a video on finishing tracks last week, so I'll link that in the description down below. And quickly, just for anyone who's wondering about my guitar setup, this is my new guitar. It's the Fender American Pro 2 with the V-Mod 2 pickups and the push-push pickup selector. It's a really nice sort of vintage style Strat sound, but with more of like a modern approach with some of the features that it's got. And yeah, for this video I recorded through the Fender Benz compressor, which I can't really move over, which is just a nice warm analog compressor that was giving it a bit of drive and obviously some nice fast compression. And then I'm going into my Laney L5 Studio. I just thought I'd mention it quickly in case anyone was wondering. Yeah, would highly recommend. And I will be back next week with some more content, so thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.